Hello, happy Saturday afternoon, and welcome to the ArtsXchnage Power of Words author panel. The ArtsXchnage is generously supported by a grant from the Community Foundation for Greater Atlanta and the Metropolitan Atlanta Arts Fund. Additional funding is provided by the Fulton County Arts Council under the guidance of the Fulton County Board of Commissioners, Georgia Council for the Arts, creations from the National Endowment for the Arts, along with our board, individual donors, and community partners. And we welcome you. And my guests today are Zachary Steele and Benji Carr, who have both released books recently. Because that's what we do, and that's what we do in the pandemic. In the pandemic, we write books, and then we get those books published. And then our friends buy our books, and then we just be literate together.
You forgot. In addition to writing books during the pandemic, we also eat a lot.
Yes, this is true. I have developed some very unhealthy habits that I'm going to have to break, or maybe I don't.
Yeah.
I mean, you don't need to know if I'm wearing pants or not. You don't need to know how tight those pants are. Like,
I have my own image. I have my own image, and I don't want you to break it.
Nobody needs to know how many boxes of Cheez-Its I eat a day.
I just push I have a bag of Cheez-Its sitting across from me. That's so wild. It's like we're living the same life. How are you all this Sunday afternoon?
I'm doing great. Doing great.
Better now that I see you, if that makes sense.
Yes.
Yay! Like, make me blush. So I'm grateful to have both of you here. I want to ask some preliminary questions before we share before you share some of your work. But I want to know three things. What is something that you learned about yourself during this time of us being kind of off the grid a little bit? And what is your guilty pleasure that has been kind of getting you through? And what have you cooked that was most interesting to you as we all had to fend for ourselves? Who wants to go first? Y'all can rock, paper, scissors for it. Or we can go in alphabetical
order. I'll go. That's fine. That's fine. Yeah, that's fine. All right. So let's see. I got stuck on the food question, which is no shock whatsoever. The first question was oh yeah, what have I missed? Okay, what have I learned that I missed the most, kind of thing through this? I actually have learned that I missed being around people a lot more than I thought I would. Because I am not one of those people that tends to be like, what I need right now is to be around other people. Usually I like to be very withdrawn. I think a year and a half of being away from everybody has now cured that. The thing that has gotten me through, it's funny because, again, my brain goes to food first. I'll say pizza because that is my guilty pleasure, and I've had copious amounts of pizza, way more than I normally do. And I actually cook a lot. So that's a very tough question for me because I've been cooking as much as normal. I did, for the first time, try chicken marsala, and it turned out very good.
Excellent. I've been cooking a lot more. What I learned about myself is I actually enjoy people with British accents yelling at Americans. So I've been watching a lot of Gordon Ramsay and then trying to cook what he cooks, and some of it's been okay.
Yeah.
We don't talk about the other parts, but yeah. So that's one of my things. So I've been cooking a lot more than I usually do. But I realized how much money I was spending. Jeez, right?
That's a lot more. It does.
Yes. How about you, Benji?
I taught myself how to fry chicken in a cast iron skillet, which was something of an endeavor. It's been a little bit of a while since I did that, though, because again, that was when I was like engaged for those 6 days that I got engaged for. Another thing that I learned about myself during a pandemic is not to get engaged, even if it's only for 6 days. Thought it was for longer. At least the jewelry is nice. And then the thing that has been getting me through most of all of everything, the gigantic weighted sadness of it all, is a movie that came out in February called Barb and Star Go to Vista Del Mar.
Oh, that was terrible.
With Kristen Wiig and Annie Mumolo. I have watched it 17 times. It is amazing.
That was terrible.
No. It's fantastic. If
Okay.
you were in, I'm sorry, if you're in the vein of something that is it's like Austin Powers if it starred my favorite aunts from Ohio, but at the same time it also has this whole like Pee-wee's Big Adventure vibe to it. It is impossible
except Pee-wee's Big Adventure is good. It's like Pee-wee's Big Adventure if he wasn't good.
It's not terrible. You have terrible taste.
That's an official review.
Taste. And I mean,
the official review.
Hey, what gets you through? I started off my pandemic in 2020 watching Moana every 2 days.
There we go. And
it was a thing that made me happy.
Now that I've gotten the food shaken loose from my brain, I do actually want to say the truthful answer is not pizza what got me through this pandemic, but I met the most wonderful woman in the world during this pandemic. So I actually have a pandemic love story, and getting to know her and her daughter, that is what has gotten me through the pandemic.
Excellent. Yay, congratulations.
I had a pandemic love story too, but it fell apart after 6 days.
I feel bad, Benji. I'm sorry.
Hey, I may or may not have had a pandemic love affair. I wasn't paying attention. I was too busy in the fetal position saying, where did all my jobs go?
Oh God. I had that happen too. I remember that.
Yeah, that March 2020 was like, I was doing a bunch of stuff and then all of a sudden I was doing nothing. And it was like, that was my face for the whole rest of March.
Yeah.
Yeah. So let's talk about process in these books that we're talking about. So we have two very different genres, right? One is more mystery and one is more funny or comedic. Would you say? Or is yours a murder mystery?
What you're talking about?
Your book.
No, I know, but I mean, mine's kind of funny. I thought
funny.
Yeah, she said funny.
But
yeah.
you said one is a murder mystery and the other one's funny. So
no,
I can't tell.
You said one is a mystery.
One is a mystery.
Oh.
So mine could qualify as mysterious because there's elements of is it real or is it not.
Meanwhile, mine has like a whole like murder, chasing people down on the run from everything type situation.
Yeah, I read a
I didn't mean to interrupt you. I'm so sorry.
Oh no, you're fine. You're fine. That's what we're here to do. We're here to talk about your things, your books. So, when did you start writing your book, Benji? When did this idea of Impacted come to you, and how did you? What was your process in creating your story? And did you edit or did you have help, or how was your process with this?
In February of 2018, I got a sentence stuck in my head. It is one of the sentences that's on the first page of the book. And it was essentially because he could not unfuck his dentist, he had to figure out another way out. That was the way that I wrote it down on a note card. And and so I was sitting at a Dunkin' Donuts about to meet my friends for dinner. And I just sort of wrote down the sentence and handed it to them around the table. And I'd been talking to my friend Jessica Nettles, who also has a book coming out. And we had decided we were going to write some flash fiction for a website called Shotgun Honey. And I'm apparently really bad at flash fiction because this ended up 50,000 words. My process was that I would write a chapter or so a week. That was my goal. I had a spreadsheet to keep track of my word counts. I would send it out to 3 or 4 beta readers. Started out as more, but it ended up only 3 or 4. And with each chapter, which ends in a cliffhanger, I would tell them that they couldn't give me any feedback, but they only could tell me to keep going because I wanted to keep going. Because I assumed that other people would try and second guess you or sort of accidentally hamstring you while you're on your way to get somewhere. in the end of it, I ended up with a decent 31 chapter book, 31 cliffhangers or so.
Nice. So what is the word count for flash fiction?
Word count for flash fiction is about 500 to 700 words.
So basically, he looked at that number and thought, well, that can't be right. There have to be some more zeros. So he just plugged them in.
Well, no, it's just that, like, I'd gotten in the habit of writing for Winston Blake Wheeler Ward for the 500, which runs every story that it receives, and I'd written some sort of detective, like gay detective stuff for him before, and so I was like writing in that vein where it was overly sarcastic and just gritty but tacky. And I also tried to incorporate his name into every story that I wrote in some way, just to test whether or not he would still publish it. And then I just sort of, I took stuff from that vein and tried to be a little more serious with it. And that's how I ended up with this book.
Okay. All right. Do you have any, are you working on anything currently?
I'm supposed to be, and I would like to be, and I have plans to be. And I have started it about 500 times over the course of the pandemic. But the book that I'm writing is all about people in communities, like hanging out together in a shopping mall, science fiction, because no one does that anymore. But
my kids and I went to North Lake Mall, and it was the saddest thing ever.
Yeah, I walked through there a couple months ago.
It's like, it was so sad. I was like, we have to leave. I'm feeling feelings, because I mean, that was my go-to mall. If I took the kids anywhere, because they had all the stuff they liked in that particular mall. But
yes,
it was so sad. So you're right. People don't hang out at the mall like they used to anymore.
Yeah, it's like a ghost town with tumbleweeds and a Dippin' Dots. It's awful.
Yeah. Yeah, it's terrible. So Zachary, what about your process? Let's talk about your process. I know this is your third book. And like, how do you approach your writing? What is your writing style?
Well, I mean, I've developed way more structure than when I started. So I would say now I have a need to create a pretty thorough outline before I actually get going with anything, because I need to know, at least from that standpoint, at least that point in time, I need to know what my story is completely, and then I tend to just start writing, and let the story go where it needs to. So if it leaves the outline, I let it go and trust it, and it tends to work out better that way. I also do the thing that most writers say never to do, which is, when I get started on any given day, I will go back about 10 pages and do a sort of read and edit. And most people say, just get the first draft out, let it be junk, you'll go back and edit it. But I kind of edit as I go, largely because I feel like it helps me stay in the flow of the story if I go back about 10 pages and then kind of just pick it up and keep going, and sort of build off of whatever tension or emotion that I was building before. And then I wish I was more consistent in terms of writing every day, but here comes my writer's excuse. But with the Broadleaf Writers Association being one thing that I manage, and some freelance editing that I do, trying to maintain some semblance of personal life, and also just the pandemic has been difficult, so it's kind of messed up my routine. But I try to write where I can, when I can, as much as I can.
Yeah, I mean, for me, it's like, writing poetry in a poetry collection is extremely different from writing a novel. But I think some of the processes are kind of the same. But I wrote this YA novel in 1996, right? Have never done anything with it. because it was my first ever actual vacation, right? And I'm on Pitcher's Pond, where many great books have been written. There was a lobster tequila night. I don't even know what happened, but then I woke up and I just started writing, and I wrote for like 7 hours straight. And then when my other friends who were on vacation with me woke up, I said, read this. And they were like, you need to do something with this. And I'm terrified because I didn't do an outline, because I didn't, do the Post-it note system like I do with my poems. I just kind of just wrote. So I think what I'm trying to do, is get brave about sharing that with somebody and letting them look at it. So like, many years later, they could tell me, oh yeah, that still doesn't suck. Or you should do something with that. So have you always written novels, or have you written other types of other genres?
Well, first I want to say, I mean, if only you knew some writers who could possibly read your work for you and tell you that it doesn't suck. I mean,
I'm a little bit shocked that Theresa Davis has a novel in a drawer that I don't know anything about.
I actually have 3. I have two YA and one kind of soft, porny lesbian tale of things. I know. I'm just okay. I think I'm just all right. You gotta be okay.
I know a place you should go. I know a place you can go and meet agents. I know several places. In addition to that, I know places where you can go and meet publishers. I know places you can go and get the first page read without anyone knowing that it's you or yours, and at the same time you get feedback on it. And
where is that, Benji?
Oh, it's the Broadleaf Writers Conference, which is next month, October 16th and 17th, online, and it is run by. Oh, you should be there. You should have been there for years now. And you are going to be there because you're performing at it, aren't you? Not to spoil everything.
As you do, but yes, I will be there.
And do you realize that by performing there, you do get the opportunity to meet with agents and meet with everyone, as well as attend panels.
Look at that. There are hidden perks.
There are hidden perks. Okay, all right. So I basically what I'm hearing is stop messing around, Theresa. Get it together. There we go.
Yeah,
my thing was. Sorry, my thing was that I used to pitch to agents and pitch to publishers when I just had the granule of an idea for a story, just because I know that it's about, just as you do, building relationships within the community, so that way, when you do have something, or if you do have something, then they already know who you are. And again, you're Theresa Davis. Everyone knows who you are and should know who you are, because you are the she pirate poet, total badass. And I don't even know what rating system is on this, so I don't know if the language that I'm using is inappropriate or not.
We're dealing with Theresa, so I'm not really sure there is any kind of. I'll be honest. Now we've gotten completely off track. I don't even remember what question you asked, because we got on this kind of like seize the moment and get Theresa's book out there kind of thing.
And it happens so up when I interview my friends. I'm just like, we're just catching up. Y'all are just hanging out, watching on the TV. It's all good. No, my question was about other genres. Do you
like what have you written prior to this?
Oh, gotcha. All right, right. Yeah, I mean, for me, I grew up like some of my first, as a teenager, some of my first big book loves were Stephen King and Edgar Allan Poe. So I got onto for about a decade writing short story horror, and I have notebooks full of short story horror that were written by a teenager. So I mean, I have done nothing with them. But as I started getting into writing full-length novels, I don't know. I don't know if I lost the edge for the short stuff or lost the desire for the short stuff. So I've kind of been predominantly in full-length novels, mostly writing some offshoot of fantasy, whether it's real-world fantasy or magical fantasy. This book is neither of those, and it was a bit of a surprise.
Okay. All right. Cool. When you this is for both of you. When you come up with your characters, do you develop characters before the story, or do you develop them within the story?
My character I developed within the first 4 chapters of the story as I mapped it out, because I wanted to, like, I started with a female protagonist who was middle-aged, and then I realized that I can't write from that perspective at all. And and that I have some background with like playwriting, where I realized that voices that are written from an outsider perspective, trying to understand a situation, where you create a character to try and figure out the way that that character thinks, versus someone of that experience who writes a character that mirrors that experience, doesn't have to explore and discover, which is, and there's value to both processes. There's value to both processes of creating. Like, to create a character not like yourself so that you can learn how to have compassion and understand a situation that is not like your own, versus me trying to explain essentially myself to people. And you know that I've done storytelling live on stage without notes. I'm occasionally funny. I go deep into painful secrets on occasion that will throw people completely off guard, but also you find a way to connect with your audience regardless. As I was saying in a discussion earlier, like, you may not know what it's like to be disabled, but you've been sick before. You've been in the hospital before. You may not know what it's like to be gay, but you know what it's like to be an outsider. However, when you're creating a character and writing a story, and when you're going to live in it to the extent that I lived here, it's best to channel the inner confused Southern teenager with too many secrets that you once were. And so that's what I did.
Yeah.
Did I answer the question thoroughly?
You answered the question good enough. Yay, thank you. But like, when you have, so like, I know, Zachary, I know your book has multiple characters in there, right? So do you have all of those characters figured out and their relationship to each other before you get into it? Or do you figure that out as you're writing it?
No, I mean, usually I do a little bit of both anyway, but generally, like, if I look at The Weight of Ashes specifically, Mark is our main protagonist. He's our 13-year-old who's lost his brother, and I knew that was my character for this story, because that is the story, and so I was able to build him out while building out the story. But then the story and Mark need other characters. And so for me, that's where the story kind of falls in, and then the characters are built after that. You know, what characters does the story need? You know, I might think like Mark has 3 friends, so I know there's a number 3, and I'll worry about what those characters are once I get the elements of the story. And there's Mark's mother. And then there was another character that popped up that I had no intention of putting in there, but, you know, he was relevant and necessary. And then, of course, you have your antagonist, your villain, and that character for me was built out after I already had elements of the story in place.
Awesome. Yay. So I want to hear a little excerpt from each of your projects, and I want to start with Zachary, if that's okay.
That's fine by me.
Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to put me and Benji out of the studio, and you're going to get the spotlight. And you have 10 to 15 minutes. Just let me know when you're ready to be done. Okay.
Oh, you'll know when I'm ready to be done.
Oh, okay. And audience, if you're listening and if you're watching, if you have any questions for any of our guest panelists, please put them in the chat. I will be able to see them and I will be able to act on your behest. But right now we are going to hear an excerpt from Zachary Steele, The Weight of Ashes.
Yes. So this is The Weight of Ashes. This is actually an advanced copy of it. But there it is. Look, that's I can hide. Okay. So anyway, The Weight of Ashes is about a young boy who loses his brother. He's unwilling to accept the death. And so he enlists the help of his friends to carry his brother's ashes to the witch on Spook Hill to have him resurrected. And largely the book is just about grief and loss and the myriad ways that we cope with it, the way we go about doing it. So the section I'm going to read is actually the second chapter. The first chapter just opens up with the accident in which Mark's brother dies, Mark's brother Mitch. And then this is the first scene after that. When I shifted, the pew creaked. Reminded me of a door opening in a haunted house, slow and eerie. Still, it was more comforting than their silence, more comforting than the bleak organ music that filled the sanctuary. Any bit of sound otherwise was crime, most of which came from Tracy Stevens. Mascara streaked her face in shades of blue and black. Her cheeks were puffy, blonde hair blasted with hairspray and unlikely to ever move again. I don't know if Tracy was ever Mitch's girlfriend, but they were close, had been for years. Few of her friends formed a tight group around her while bawling away as if tears were breath. Maybe they knew Mitch, maybe Tracy's sobs got to them, but the commotion certainly made the other kids in the church stare forward as if there was nothing else to look at, blank as could be. Like they were hit by a shoe and weren't sure how to react. From my pew a few rows from the back, it all looked like a show. Mama stood near the pulpit, unbalanced and fighting a decorative white wooden box on a tall oak stand at her side. Mitch's ashes were in there, in a sealed bag. I hadn't looked at them, didn't need to. From the time she'd picked them up, Mama kept the box close by, barely letting it down. Even asleep, she'd set it centered on the dresser at the foot of her bed where she could see it. Wet trails streaked her cheeks, balled hands tied around a wad of used tissues, shaking slightly, but she looked pretty. It'd been a long while since I'd seen her in a dress. This one was black and almost to the floor. I think it was new. I couldn't remember seeing it before. To her side, Reverend Mills loomed, long face working that practiced somber grin he probably learned in Reverend school. People usually bought into it, somehow felt better no matter what was ailing them. I just wanted him to go away. He'd been trying to talk to me about Mitch every time I was within earshot, kept feeding Mama lines about heaven and Mitch being home with Jesus, buried in his ways he couldn't possibly understand. He didn't know what I knew. Mitch always said that was the problem with church folk. They're all just waiting in a line they're not allowed to leave, just living to die. He told me to live, stay out of lines. There's more than one road home, and more than one way to cheat death. You sure about this? I mean, how do you know? Reggie was always the first to speak. Not that she talked too much, just first, whether he wanted her to or not. I wanted to look at her, but couldn't bring myself to. I'd never seen her hair out of pigtails or not covered by a ball cap. It hung long over her shoulders like black silk, shiny and stark against her pale blue dress. Her grandma was a full-blooded Cherokee. Reggie got her dark eyes and tan skin. Despite that, the rosy shade of her cheeks flared like heat, eyes made up. It was stupid, I knew, but it felt like she was in costume, like she was someone else. She was Regina, a girl I'd never met that made me stupid nervous for some reason. Not the friend I'd had since second grade. The friend I'd spent more alone time with anyone, no worry over boys and girls and sticky gross feelings that made me sweat. Now my palms were slick no matter how much I rubbed them on the legs of my trousers. So I just listened and stared at the hymnal tucked in the back of the pew ahead. If I only heard her voice, it was still Reggie. Seen it, I said, voice barely above a whisper. She can do it. But how? Reggie dropped into quiet, fiddled with the fluffy hem of her dress. Mitch isn't, well, I mean, he's not. How can she even make that happen now? Dunk turned a bit her way, his wide frame rocking the entire pew, buttons threatening to pop free of his pinstripe dress shirt. Phoenix rises from the ashes. Why can't Mitch? Yeah, I know, but Reggie stopped short again, but she didn't need to finish. I knew what she would have said. She was always good at that kind of thing, change direction like a bird in flight, but I knew how she flew. Spook Hill's a long way. Has to be 6 miles or so. 4. Mitch said it takes about 3+ hours by foot since we have to cut through the woods. And if it's still raining, it'll stop. Their stares fell on me heavy. I could only look at Reggie for a flash. Something in the way she looked at me was different, seemed to probe deeper, kind of like a look trying to be a hug. was weird, and I didn't like it. Dunk and Mo stayed silent, sitting just past her, waiting, smart enough to know she'd talk again before they could anyway. Saw it on the news. She didn't let up. She never let up. Spook Hill's big, Mark. How are we supposed to find her? Map? Mitch drew it. He's good with maps. For a second, Mo looked ready to say something. His thick lips opened and closed as he pushed his large glasses as high up as they went. The frames were as dark as his skin, sometimes nearly impossible to see. No words to offer, he pressed his suit, leaned back, and all but vanished behind Dunk. Not a hard thing to do when you were as small as he was. I knew it well. We were both short and scrawny and as easy to miss as a frog with no croaker. Thunder rattled the stained glass windows, giving the kaleidoscope Jesus behind the choir seats a good shake. Tracy squealed, then wailed even louder. Another group of people passed through the vestibule and into the sanctuary on a line down the aisle past us. I steadied my gaze on the cover of the hymnal, unwilling to make eye contact. I didn't want anyone else offering me condolences that weren't necessary. I mean, we'll go, said Reggie, giving a good puff of a sigh for effect. Whatever you need. Dunk nodded in agreement, round cheeks hot pink and wobbling along. Mo had to lean forward for me to see him doing the same, though with that half smile of his that said he wasn't sold. Reggie noted Mama with a quick nod. She won't be happy with you. She'll be happier when I come back with Mitch. Reggie shifted a touch toward me, our elbows grazing, ready to lower her voice to say something practical I wouldn't want to hear, but a sharp yelp cut her off. Almost sheltered behind the pulpit, Mama cradled the white box, whispering something to Reverend Mills. Like a soldier on orders, he stepped into the aisle, hand out, palm to the shoulder of a small woman that clearly wanted nothing to do with him. If it had only been her screeching protest, I'd still have known it was Aunt Dawn. Her voice cracked when she screamed, which was often as if she caught a cough that wouldn't quit. Behind her, Gordon backed off a few easy steps at a time, head on a slow swivel, gave the impression he was checking to see who was watching. But I knew better. He was looking past everyone, looking for me. I never much cared for the way he stared at me, especially since the day at the ball field, like he was thinking of all the ways he could get back at me for ending his chances at playing professional ball. There in the commotion of the sanctuary, it gave my heart a skip, burning me from the inside out. I wanted to hurt him. I wanted Mitch's green Easton bat so I could finish the job right and crack open Gordon's head. But I couldn't. He had to be alive or none of it would matter. Cuts lined Gordon's face and neck as if he'd gone to war with a feral cat. His left arm was in a sling, same as the one he wore for 6 weeks after I cracked his shoulder blade in April. He'd only had it free for 3 weeks. He shouldn't have come. Neither of them should have. He was the reason we were there at all. Aunt Dawn made a wild attempt to force herself around the Reverend, who, to his credit, wrapped her up with his long arms and swept her away. Another time, he said, calm as anything, as if this sort of thing happened all the time. With the exception of Tracy and Aunt Dawn, the entire sanctuary had fallen stone silent. But Tracy went bawling louder as if she just heard the news all over again, like this was about her. I need to see her. Let me go. Aunt Dawn landed a solid elbow to the Reverend's ribs, and he buckled down to a knee, struggling to find a breath as Aunt Dawn bowled him over to get to Mama. Morgan, please. Mama turned the white box away in a flash, climbed the 3 steps to the stage, and backed away, head shaking. I can't talk to you. Her voice dropped to a whimper behind a fresh wash of tears. I'd never seen her this way, and it drove my temper to boiling hot. Not right now. Mitch would have put a stop to it straight off, would have put himself between Mama and a grizzly, but I didn't move. I just sat there beside my friends, fists clenched, all 4 of us watching like it was the most intense episode of the Wonder Years we'd ever seen. Aunt Dawn kneeled at the base of the steps, repeated cries of please, drowned out by sobs. Mama had all but backed into the choir seats. The Reverend found his footing at Aunt Dawn's side at a distance, trying to encourage her away. Gordon, on the other hand, worked his way up the aisle, away from Aunt Dawn's outbursts as if he hardly knew her. Taking his cue as an opportunity of their own, a few folks rose from the pews and filed out ahead of Gordon. He clipped Mrs. Wilkins' walker, and she made a fuss. Her teeth weren't in. Whatever she said was done and over in a hurry, not that Gordon was listening. There was a moment when he stopped, hand flipped through his blonde hair, bloodshot blue eyes, looking down on me, when I could have sworn he wasn't bothered by any of it, that he could have cared less what happened to Mitch, could have cared less who it hurt. Maybe I'd known him too long to think otherwise. Mitch always said Gordon carried his heart like it was a grenade. Let's talk. His voice was softer than normal, but still sharp and to the point, quieter version of his mother. I tried to think of all the things Mitch might say, but in the ruckus I couldn't focus. Murph, let's go. He flinched, triggered by another volley of wails from Aunt Dawn. This place gives me the creeps. He doesn't want to talk to you. Dunk stood, filling the aisle as fast as I'd ever seen him move. His thick arms bowed, fists balled, cheeks red hot. For a 13-year-old kid, Dunk was strong. He said it was from working so often at construction with his dad. Stuff it, more size. Nobody's asking. It's Sizemore, shot Reggie, up as well. The smile on Gordon's face made me sick, as did the way he eyed her. Well, well, you are a pretty little Indian girl after all, aren't you? If you ever want to be a woman, go away. The hymnal flew in a flutter of pages, as much a shock to me as anyone. I didn't even realize I'd grabbed it. It collected Gordon's shoulder with a thud. He yelped, nearly drawing his arm free of the sling, only to yell louder as the pain from the shoulder blade kicked in. This is your fault, and you're going to pay for it. Once the worst of the pain subsided, he laughed, a slow and amused chuckle. I wanted to throw up. Did he think it was a joke? Pay? What you think you're going to do, runt nuts? Mo moved to block his path, but was hardly a match. Gordon shoved him hard to the pew with ease, raised the back of his free hand to strike Dunk clear. That was as far as he got. Aunt Dawn's palm found his cheek with a swipe of her left hand, turned his head in a quick snap. Pop was loud enough to silence the rain. Gordon locked onto me like I was the one who'd hit him. In the car, now. Aunt Dawn's voice emerged all breath, a growl that somehow filled the room. A red welt rose from ear to chin, but Gordon didn't reach for it. He barely reacted at all. Instead, he withdrew back and clear until he dropped from sight. The fierceness in Aunt Dawn's face faded, skin washed pale, tears streaking rapid. She cast a final look at Mama, then briefly at me like I was supposed to come in for a hug. Then she turned and stormed out. As soon as the door shut behind her, the rain let its breath free and fell heavy once again. If I wasn't ready before, I was now. The wrong person was in that oak box. Mitch deserved better, and I was going to make sure he got it. Now and tomorrow, I said to my friends, at the junkyard, we'll head to the mall from there. A nod passed from Reggie, Dunk, to Mo. Then I worked my way free to tend to Mama.
Thank you, thank you, thank you. I have a question.
Thank you. Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so we're talking about
It would appear we have some technical issues. So I assume Theresa will be back in just a moment. So everybody hold on and we'll prep some jokes or something.
I'm back. Can y'all hear me?
I can hear and see you.
Oh my God. It is so stressful being alive. What I was asking was, why did you set your story in 1989?
Oh, okay. I can answer that. The interesting thing is a lot of the scene mentioned the witch on the witch who is the witch on Spook Hill, and a lot of that story was built out from folklore, rural folklore that I grew up around, stories that I heard when I was a kid that were spooky and kind of tested my nerve if I wanted to go explore a haunted house or a haunted area or something like that. And there was something about that particular era for me as a child that kind of resonated with that. I mean, now it's certainly a lot easier to debunk it, because if I'm a kid and I hear a story, I'm just going to look it up. But also from a pop culture reference, that was my jam back then, and I wanted to be able to just use a lot of the pop culture that I identified with as a child, and to build a story around it. So there's a lot of, like I mentioned, the Wonder Years, and a lot of music and movies and things that are mentioned. Battleship as a game that was mentioned. Uno, things like that I grew up with in that era, and I wanted to build a story around it.
Nice. Okay. I think that probably, if you're an author, that probably kind of helps you keep your continuity going, and kind of keep build some sort of parameter, so you don't go too far outside of yourself. Right. Thank you so much for sharing. Again,
you're welcome.
Thank everybody. The power in the building went off, and I don't even know, because that wasn't in the script. But we are back, and right now we are going to hear from Benji Carr, and reading from Impacted.
Hi, everybody. I forgot to unmute myself. This is live. Hi, my book is called Impacted. It is about what happens when a young teen father in a small southern town is having an affair with his dentist, trying to keep it from his girlfriend and his mother and the new baby that he has at home. And accidentally, in the middle of an argument, beats the dentist to death. The section that I'm going to be reading from is about a different character. One of my favorite characters in the book. This is Celeste. She is the dental hygienist. And if my book had a detective, then Celeste would be the detective. When Celeste was growing up, her mother used to fret endlessly about how the girl spent her free time. She'd eye the Lois Duncan and Stephen King books warily, as though they were weapons, or worse, cigarettes. The VHS copies of A Nightmare on Elm Street and Jagged Edge troubled her so much that she wouldn't even read the plot descriptions. Celeste spent her evenings glued to cop shows, murder mysteries, and Lifetime movies. Looking at all that stuff is going to warp you, Mama would say. No wonder you're depressed. All that violence and sadness. Now, Celeste didn't think that there was any danger in stories warping her any more than the world itself would, same as it does to anyone. But Mama wouldn't hear any arguments. She would just worry that her daughter wasn't normal. Her mother spent her nights reading Harlequin romance novels with happy endings and great kisses, Celeste thought. But those books never taught her mother how to pick a good man, so there. And Celeste believed that violence in media didn't create a violent, abusive, or sad world. It just reflected it back. And Celeste was fascinated by the darkness of the world, the secrets that normal people try to hide. Thus, she took it all in. The shows, the books, the movies. She found it an easy way to experience situations and relate to feelings without having to actually suffer through them. Stories teach compassion, Celeste learned. But her mama wouldn't hear it. Anything darker than Nancy Drew was going to ruin her. Good girls don't spend time studying monsters, Mama would lecture, which would cause Celeste to just turn up the volume on Cagney and Lacey. If what her mother believed was true, Celeste had been preparing to kill a man since middle school. And now another section that I'm going to read. It's just a paragraph long. It's chapter 18. This is my favorite paragraph in the entire book. And trauma echoes. The impression it makes, like, it's my favorite chapter of the book, and I stumble over it because that's me. Trauma echoes. The impression it makes lasts longer after. I did it again. Trauma echoes. The impression it makes lasts long after the first impact. Yes. Folks aren't rattled just once by a particularly bad incident. They're shaken for good. Like a sealed can of Coke that someone sloshes around and then just returns to the shelf. There's a chance that the pressure and chemistry building up inside it might dull over time, but there's no guarantee of that. There's no telling how long someone might remain volatile once they've been subjected to pain and shock. Some people endure for ages just fine. Others explode. Thank you. You're muted.
It's not one thing, it's another. I love your description of how you accidentally beat the dentist to death. Huh.
With a pair of ceramic teeth.
Huh. Sounds so painful. So intricate. So, Benji, I have a question for you.
It's on the cover of the book.
What advice would you give to someone who is preparing for their first novel? Like, what were some of the things that you had to like compartmentalize or get right in your mind before you got brave enough to go ahead and just be like, I'm good at it? What is some advice you would give to encourage that?
This is gonna sound a little bit ridiculous coming from me, but trust yourself and be confident. which I don't know if you've met me before. It's a journey. Anyway, yeah, this is my first novel. This is not my first try. Every book, from what I heard from the late Pat Conroy, is that every book teaches you essentially how to write it. And Pat Conroy said that writing a novel was essentially like having a nervous breakdown on paper, and that's why he didn't write more of them. For those who dare to try, I admire it. A lot of times it's a compulsion. Writing happens whether we enjoy it or for fun or not. It's because there's some sort of quirk in us that feels that what we have to say is different from anything else that anyone else has ever put down, and that our voice is worth hearing. And what I found in writing a novel is that essentially I had to trust that I knew where it was going, and also allow myself, which I learned through improv, to fail if it screwed up and to just go back and start over, because nothing is particularly permanent, and there isn't anything that you can do that can't be fixed. Unless you're Kevin Spacey. So just, I guess, be patient with yourself and surround yourself with supportive people and find a community that supports you. As you know, Theresa, we are part of a very, very supportive community here in Atlanta, in addition to at Broadleaf. And so I found my people, and I decided just to tell them a story. I didn't know beyond me if the world was going to see it, or if, you know, a small section of a group of Atlanta deciding to buy hundreds of copies is going to see it. But write the book for yourself and write the book for the 2 or 3 people that you know it's going to entertain. Because if they like your jokes, then they'll probably like what you have to say. Keep that kind of laser focus. And again, be confident. And trust that you know what you're doing.
No, that's awesome. I think that is something that a lot of us struggle with. And I'm sure many times during this pandemic, and I've had my imposter syndrome kick into like the nth degree. And it's just not pleasant. And you know when you're doing it, when you're second guessing yourself and you're talking yourself out of good things. So I appreciate that. Zachary, as someone in the community who has all these tools and offers these tools to other writers in the community, what is some advice that you would give? And also let folks know more about Broadleaf Writers Conference. I put it in the chat, but this is the 6th annual conference, and tell us more about that as well.
Okay, I mean, as far as advice to writers, Benji covered a good bit of things that I certainly would suggest. Mine, beyond that, is definitely never ever stop learning. This is a craft that it is, I think, impossible for somebody to sit down and say, I'm going to perfect this. You're going to learn to be the best that you can be within the framework of that. But if you decide you have learned as much as you can learn, then you're probably right. You'll never learn more than that. And so it doesn't matter where you're at on your journey, just keep learning. And then I would echo the find your people. There are writing communities all over the place, and Broadleaf happens to be one of them. But find other writers who can. The writers are. This is a solitary thing that we do. We are in our heads. We are in our own space. We are in our stories, and we experience rejection and imposter syndrome and doubts time and time again. So find the people who understand you, fellow writers who understand the struggles, they understand the pain, they understand the difficulties, and are eager to help you with your writing, and then you help them. It's a give and take thing. So find your people, be a part of the community, get involved, go to programs, join writers organizations. If they have openings and you qualify and you're interested, join the board, join committees, do whatever you have to do, get involved, be a part of the community. And to answer your other question, which I will narrow down to a small window because I can talk Broadleaf for hours. Broadleaf Writers is a nonprofit writing organization that I founded in 2015. Our founding board was very active in helping us do that. Benji came on right after that. I've had the privilege of knowing Benji for 20 years, so it's great to be able to work on this project with him and to have him as president of the board and really being an integral part of it. But Broadleaf Writers is about community. It's about education, and it's about inspiration. And so what we hope with our programming, not just the conference, but the programming throughout the year, is to give writers of all genres and styles and age, all backgrounds, the opportunity to see writing that they connect with and to learn from writers who have achieved some level of success and have something to offer. Because again, you can always learn. The conference itself is 2 days of panels and workshops and one-on-one pitch sessions with agents, and we've added one-on-one mentoring sessions with agents and authors. We've got the first pages critique where you, as Benji had mentioned, you anonymously submit your first pages and a panel of agents hears it and reacts cold to it, sometimes too cold, but I mean cold as in they haven't heard it. But they give you a very good understanding of the difference of opinion that exists, the idea of that. And, you get all this for, especially right now, because we're online, we've lowered the cost, a very low cost, plus recordings because we're online. And we're adding this Saturday night reception that we have live storytellers like Theresa coming in to do wonderful storytelling for us. So it's just an organization that I believe strongly in, and want to continue to grow because I believe that we can create a community of writers that help writers. And I'll stop myself there.
No, I appreciate that. I can't wait for us to get back in person because I would love to do some more community building in our space as well. Just so it kind of sucked that we had our opening year, and then the next year we had a pandemic.
Yeah. I look forward to that as well.
Yeah, excellent. Well, I want to thank you both so much for joining me this Sunday afternoon. Benji, you had your hand up for a second. Did Zach fill it in?
Zach filled it in.
Okay, all right, cool. No, we want no question unanswered. I want to thank you both so much for joining me. This was a fun conversation, despite all the technical difficulties on my end. And I look forward to other folks checking out your work. And do you have any events that are coming up that people might want to know about? This is a time to plug those. Benji.
I have a book signing at Eagle Eye in person on Wednesday night at 7. I am in conversation with Colleen Oakley, the author of The Invisible Husband of Frick Island, which is a lovely book that is nothing like mine. And as a benefit, hopefully, my parents will actually show up at this one, but I do not know.
That's on Wednesday?
That's on Wednesday at 7 p.m. Yeah.
Excellent.
Yes, and we've got Broadleaf coming up.
Yeah, it's like my events have ended right here today because we have the conference coming up and I need my attention there. And I'm fortunate enough to have a hardback, so I'll have a paperback release of this next spring, and hopefully we'll have more in-person events.
Yes, I look forward to those days. Thank you again. Thank you, community at large, for listening and checking us out. Again, we are the ArtsXchnage, and you have just encountered the Power of Words author panel with Zachary Steele and Benji Carr. Please check out their books, The Weight of Ashes and Impacted. I will see you back here again in October, where my author will be Dr. Doris Derby, who is a profound photographer, storyteller, poet, who will be who will be giving us a chronology of her work in the civil rights movement, and as we move forward into a humanities project that we will be working on her with here at the ArtsXchnage virtually at the top of the new year. So thank you so much for being here. You all have a beautiful, beautiful rest of your day, and bye. Keep reading, keep writing.
Theresa.
Bye. Thank you so much.
Yes, thank you. Thank you, Benji.